In a distant, alien dimension, one man stands alone, marooned. With no food, no resources, what horrors may be lurking in plain sight? Can he survive the end? In theaters this summer.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Minecraft The Journey with me, BugmanCX. We're in Minecraft Beta 1.9 pre-release 4 in the new end dimension. In the last episode we dove into the end portal and ended up here, but then we went off into a creative world so that we could explore the new Ender Dragon, which isn't available in this version yet. And then I came back to this world and I kind of realized, I have no way of getting back. So it's a good thing I only brought basic gear with me, but since we are here, we might as well explore this End Island a little bit more closely. As we know, this End Island is ultimately going to be used for the dragon fight, but unfortunately the dragon is disabled in this version, so as long as we're here in the end, we will never see one. Oh, I know, it's sad, I know. But look around us, we're surrounded by new blocks and our old friends, the Enderman. So let's have a wander around here and see exactly what has changed. First of all, we have this brand new block here in the end, and we don't technically know what it's called yet. But in Beta 1.9 pre-release 3, there was this new white texture which was added to the game's texture files. And if you have a look at it, you can see that it looks a bit like cobblestone, right? Just with whiter textures. And that's because it is a direct copy of the cobblestone texture. And here, in the end, this new block has had this greeny, yellowy tint applied to it, and that's what we see in this strange dimension that we're in. I guess it all makes sense because the end portal frames are most likely made up of this block, because you can see that with those being retextured in this version as well, they've had part of this texture applied to this new block texture. But in pre-release 4, we now have access to this block in the end, right? So let's mine it up and see what we get. Oh boy, this takes ages. We get cobblestone. How interesting. It's a retexture of the cobblestone and it drops a cobblestone. Are you telling me that the developers were lazy? Oh, come on, Notch. You can do better than this. So how are we going to get one of these blocks if we only get a cobblestone drop? Luckily I brought a disposable tool with me, and that is this here, a Silk Touch iron pickaxe. I'm not going to waste my good tools over here in the end. I'm going to bring in this one. So let's mine up this one and see if we can get one of these. I want to find out what it's called, and as we know, we can use the tooltips to discover what these new blocks are called within the game. Aha, I knew it. I knew Silk Touch would do it, but this has given us the ability to pick up this item. Okay, let's have a little bit of a look at this and see exactly what this new block is called. It doesn't have a name. We've seen this before, and this is when blocks get added to the game when no translation has been added to the language files, and we end up with this, just this blank tooltip. So technically, we have absolutely no idea what this block is called, except we do. It's called Endstone, but as far as the game's concerned, we don't know. What we can do, though, is have a little bit of a peek ahead, because this block naming issue will get fixed in the next version, and the way that the language file works has the name of the blocks as they're referenced in code, and then the name of the blocks as we see them in game. So if we take a look at what the name of this block is in the code, we can learn something very interesting about it, because this block is referred to as white stone in the game's code. Now, isn't that interesting? Here it's called Endstone because the Ender got renamed to become the End, but before this it was possibly going to be known as Whitestone. It just gives you a bit of an understanding of how the developers are thinking and how they're coding these new items into the game before they make their way into an actual release. The End Dimension is basically just this big hunk of rock hanging here in infinite darkness. But how did it end up being like this? I mean, why is it just this big lump of cheese up in the sky? I thought we were supposed to get a sky dimension with floating islands and cool biomes and all sorts of stuff like that. Why did we just get one crappy island in the middle of nothingness? Well, Jeb shed some light on why the sky dimension was a complete failure. He said, it didn't work so well because of how light is calculated. The sky dimension originally had this top-down light that the overworld has, so you get like shadows in caves and such. But performance-wise, it didn't work. It was extremely slow. So we removed the sun. Now everything is evenly lit, unless you've got a torch. So now you know the secret. Performance issues? Block out the sun. But since this is what we did get, I suppose we should explore it. It's quite difficult to do this in survival, so I'm going to take a liberty today and jump into creative mode so we can get a better perspective of this entire dimension. From out in the distance here, we can see that this end island really is just one big hunk of rock hanging in space. Other than these little islands here, I mean, these are part of the main end dimension island, but ultimately this is the only lump of rock that you'll find in infinite blackness. And I do mean infinite. I mean, behind us here is absolutely nothing. The end island is the only thing here in this entire realm. But I do say infinite blackness, but I don't really mean it. If you have a look off into the distance there and I increase the brightness just a little bit, you can see that it's not black at all. In fact, it's kind of speckly. And that's because the game uses this texture file here to generate the sky around us. So if you ever looked up at the end sky and thought, look at this infinite blackness, you were wrong. It's full of color. I'm flying straight up into the sky because I want to try and get a sense of how large or how small, I guess, depending on your perspective, this end island actually is. And I figure the bird's eye view is the best place to do that. Hopefully from some point in the sky here, we should be able to get the entire island in view. Although the higher we get, the darker things get, so it's not really that clear. But that looks like about it. The entire island is now within my field of view. Can you tell how large it is from that? I'm not sure if you can. Can you see weird patterns down in the terrain generation below? I definitely can see a face. Is that a man with a beard poking his tongue out? I don't know. Let me know what you see. But I also want to show you something from down underneath the island as well. And this is the end dimension from Y level 0. I'm just flying around underneath the island because we've got to remind ourselves that this is a floating island hanging up here in space. And if I just head down, down, down into the void here, I'm going to start taking damage, aren't I? And die. I wonder how we can get a better view of the island. This is it. This is about as low as I can get before I start taking void damage. And just for interest's sake, did you know that it's minus 64 when you start taking void damage? So there's something else that I learned. But floating around down here, we can see the underside of the island. And it's not as impressive as the top side. But there you go, the bottom side of the end island. The end dimension is full of this end stone, but there's also obsidian everywhere. Here, 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 and here. Right in the center of the island. This platform here is located at 0, 0, and this is where the player will spawn in as they come into the end dimension through the end portal, right in the middle of the island, right beneath what would be an ender dragon flying right above your head, or will be in the future when it's actually added to the game. But what's interesting about this platform is that it isn't part of the terrain generation here in the end. It's only generated when the player passes through the end portal. So we can actually show this by flying up here in the middle and leaving this within our camera view. And if I sign out of the game, delete the end dimension and force the terrain to regenerate, this spawning platform should disappear. And just like that, it's gone. I've regenerated this entire terrain and, as you can see, no more end platform. But maybe there's a way to observe the platform spontaneously appearing. Oh, way up there! I've switched over to multiplayer so we can get a great view of exactly what happens with this platform. First job is we need to just get rid of the entire thing, so thankfully creative mode means I can just bash all of these out of the way. Now I've got to go and throw myself off a cliff and jump back into the end again. The things I do for this job. I'm back at the end portal again, so keep your eye on things and see exactly what happens. 3, 2, 1... Wow, look at that. An obsidian platform just appeared right beneath me. Amazing. And speaking of multiplayer, there is something else that I wanted to take a look at. And, well, first is something a little bit weird, but it appears that when you get rid of an active spawner in multiplayer, the particles stay behind. Isn't that strange. But even more amazing is this bug here. Check this out. Sometimes in multiplayer, when you go into the end... What? Ah! This center chunk here doesn't render. Although it is actually there, because I think if I walk out here, there should be obsidian right there. So let's walk on it and see what happens. Oh, I'm getting all jittery because I think my game client thinks there's no blocks there, but in fact there are. And that Enderman is doing exactly the same. But isn't this a little bit strange? So let's see which chunk this is. This is the positive chunk from 0, 0, not rendering in. A really strange bug, and this doesn't always happen, but it happens from time to time. Let's see if we can go down here and find the land. There we go. Right where I'm going all jiggly, we've found the land. Yeah, so that's a bit of a strange one. I'm not really sure why this sort of bug would exist, but it does. Time to explore the end's final and perhaps strangest feature. These large columns made up entirely of obsidian, and as I said before, these things are solid obsidian. I can go all the way down and they are just obsidian from top to bottom. But what are they? What are they called and why are they here? Well, they will have something to do later on with the dragon fight, but for now they just merely exist. But there are some oddities about these that I want to have a look at. First, they are solid obsidian, so how far down do they actually go? Because as I fly around underneath the island here, I can't see any of them, which tells me that they don't go all the way down to the bottom. So let's dig down next to one and see how far down it actually goes. Oh, hello. I was about to start digging right here. I'm going to dig right here, right next to the column. So let's just dig down. Oh, this is a surprise. No, excuse me, Enderman. But they're actually only at surface level. They don't go down into the end stone. Oh, I find that quite surprising. So what actually are these? What are they called? Well, they're actually called spikes, and we know this because if you watch the logs of the world while it's generating the end dimension, you can see that it actually places them randomly on the terrain, and it calls them spikes when it does so. But there are also some interesting things about the placement of these spikes which might be quite surprising. Even though the terrain generation around us is consistent, the placement of the spikes is not. It seems to be random. I'm not really sure. There must be a formula behind it, but it's definitely not consistent. So if I were to delete this dimension, the placement of the spikes would be different the next time I came in here. And we can check this out. Let's have a look. So we've got this giant spike on the right-hand side of us, and to the front of us, we can see, well, we've got a little one here, and also that little bit of end stone there we can use as a reference to see exactly where we are. So now I'll delete and re-enter the end, and we'll see what happens. With a freshly deleted end dimension, let's see what happens. And there we go, we have our end terrain generation. We can see that little bit there, which was our reference point from last time. And as you can see, the pillars are completely different. There was a giant one right here and a tiny little one down there. And if I were to repeat this experiment over and over, the placement of the spikes would be different every time. Now, why Notch chose to do it this way, I don't really know. Maybe to give it an air of randomness, but considering this dimension's only supposed to generate once per world, I don't really know why it has to be different each time, but it is what it is. I think the only other thing that's interesting about the end dimension is there are so many Endermen behind me, and I'm looking forward to building an Enderman farm so that we can farm up those precious Ender Pearls in the future. But there's no point doing that in our survival world at the moment because we're going to have to reset the end dimension at least a couple more times because things will change between now and when the dragon is eventually properly introduced. But before we finish up in this dimension, we do have a little bit more time to do some experiments here in this creative world. Because there's no dragon in the end dimension yet, there's no way out. In the future when we do slay the dragon, it will open up a way for us to return back to the overworld, but for now, we're just kinda trapped. Or are we? I want to do some experiments here because I don't really know what happens if you try and light, say, a nether portal inside of another dimension like this. Let's pop this up here like this, and that's looking good. We've got one of these, a flint and steel. Let's see if we can light it. No. You know what? I really didn't think so. But, whoops. But there are some ways we can get around this in creative mode. Let's just pop down a crafting table here because I brought with me some of these. nether portal blocks. Now, if I was able to light this portal normally in the overworld, of course, it would fill this portal. Oh, you can't do it like that, can you? It's weird you can't place them together, but we can do that. That's good enough. It doesn't really make any difference. Now, if I jump into this portal here, is this going to take me to the nether? I don't know. Let's find out. Oh, it's doing the warbly thing. It's going somewhere. We've made it. We've made it to the nether. I presume it's just 0, 0. Yeah, pretty much 0, 0. And that shouldn't normally be possible. But of course, I think what's happened there is that it's just calculated the coordinates from the dimension I was in and placed the nether portal here in the right coordinates. I wanted to repeat this experiment because I found it interesting that the portal was placed at 0, 0, and I wanted to see if the portal placement would take into account the coordinates of the end dimension here. So I've come out here to minus 513, and I'm going to place down a portal, and if I go through it, we'll see if the coordinates in the nether correspond to this location, as if this dimension were in the overworld. Let's find out. Whoa, hello. Okay, what is this? Interesting. We've appeared on a little island, and the coordinates in the nether are minus 60. So that's roughly 500 divided by 8 is roughly 60. That seems right to me. But our portal experiments shouldn't end there. I got curious. I wonder what happens if we create an end portal in the end. Will it take us back to the end? So I got these end portal frames, and I'm going to put them down on the floor like this, being sure to place them all in the correct orientation so that we can create ourselves an end portal. Now, normally you wouldn't be able to get these blocks in the end anyway, so who knows what's going to happen. Let's place in the eyes in all of these frames like so, and if we place the last one, hopefully we'll get a portal. No, we got nothing. I wonder why we got nothing. But I had a feeling something like this might happen, so I brought some end portal blocks with me as well. And if we place these down in the middle of the portal here, where are they? I can't see them. They're definitely not there, are they? Nope. Wait, why is the game allowing me to place down the blocks but not actually placing them? Is this some trickery in this dimension which is preventing these blocks from existing? Listen. You can hear the game placing the blocks, but they just never place. That's unfortunate, but we are experimenting, so I'm going to try something different. I cheated. I used MC Edit to replace this block here with the end portal block ID, and look, it has worked. So the restriction must be on placing the blocks down, not having them in the dimension. So, shall we find out what happens if we go through this portal? We should end up right up there on top of that. So let's give this a try. I thought that would happen. Should we do one more experiment? Let's just place a bunch of bricks down, and I'm going to go back into MC Edit, replace these blocks with end portal blocks, and see what happens. Can we get ourselves stuck in an infinite loop of entering the end? Oh, this could be disastrous. Unfortunately, I really don't think this is going to work. I've placed these diamond blocks here to demonstrate something that I forgot about with this platform. Not only does it regenerate the platform, but it actually generates space above the platform. I think it's 3 blocks. So I'm just going to go over here and jump back through the portal. And when we do, we should see that several of these diamond blocks have been removed from the platform. Yes, looks like 3 blocks were removed, which is higher than jump height even. So even if I were to place them above us here, I don't think I could get it to work, which is really quite sad. But maybe what we can do instead, just for a bit of fun, is place them all around the edge here. If I do this and then replace all of these diamond blocks with end portal frames, maybe we can just continuously press forward and have a bit of a laugh that way. I've just replaced the entire platform in MC Edit, so, oh, look at that. It just lit up the ground in a really weird way for some unknown reason. Oh, it's all smoky underneath as well. Okay, let's hop back up above and jump right in, and let's see what happens. Okay, yes, as we can see, we've got our obsidian platform reformed, but around the edges now, we have this end portal. So let's just press and hold forward. Yep. Oh, that's loud. That's loud. Ooh, okay, I think we've had enough of that. Well, it's nice to be home again in my regular Minecraft The Journey world. Kind of, because we're still stuck here in the end, and as we know, there's no way out for me. I can't even take home my end stone with me. I just have to deal with this first. Right, as I was saying, you have to pay real close attention in this reverse F5 mode because you could look at anyone. Okay. I guess that's one way back. That wasn't what I planned, but it'll do. Oh, so thank you everybody for watching today's episode. Unfortunately, you didn't get to watch me throw myself into the void this time. Oh well, boom, you know, the game is the game. Thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, then feel free to leave me a comment or like the video, subscribe, do all of the things that help the channel grow. Thank you to my wonderful patrons for supporting me. You can be one too just by clicking the links down below or join the Discord and come and hang out. But I'll see everybody in the next episode. For now, this has been BugmanCX. You've been watching Minecraft The Journey. Bye-bye.